Here we are once again. I'd like to talk to you about the sin offering and what Christ did in relation to being rapture ready. And a lot of people have contacted me and asked me, about their personal lives and what they feel they're not in compliance with God's will or something to that effect. So I'd like to talk to you guys about that and talk to you about a dream that I had in the beginning of all this back in 2011. If you're watching the news, you know that North Korea is making huge threats. They've shut down that industrial facility and all those kind of things, moved some missiles into launching position. Russians and the Chinese are both aggravated. China has troops that they're mobilizing on the border. So we're looking at things heating up over there. The Lord is coming soon. In the beginning, when the law was handed down through Moses to Israel, they were commanded to have a once-a-year sacrifice for sins. The priest did that for all the general population, for the whole congregation they called it. And then you could do individual sacrifices for personal sins of yours, sins that were intended willingly or unintended. Sometimes you could sin by accident. So Jesus came to fulfill that law. He came to be that sacrifice that's perpetually sacrificed all sin. From the beginning of time, he paid for it to the end of time, when that angel puts his foot on the land and in the sea and declares that time is no more in Revelations. So the Lord has taken our sin, all sin. Hitler's sin, Stalin's sin, where Stalin killed 30 to 60 million people. Hitler killed millions and millions of people, including 6 million Jews. All these terrible things that we see happening on the news and in life, the things that happen in our personal life, the Lord died for all of that. There is nothing in our own righteousness that can get us into the kingdom of God. The only righteousness we have is His. If you think you're going to take that before Him, what you've done, and feel good about what you've done, you're wrong. It's only Him. Ours is filthy rags. Paul the Apostle struggled with this. If you read those writings, those are letters to various churches telling these people, you can't live by the law. You have to live by faith in what Christ did for you. That's the whole thing. And so, in the beginning of this, when I rededicated my heart to the Lord, and I was praying about my situation, because my spouse did not want me to really talk about the rapture or anything to any of her friends that she's involved with. So, and she said, the Lord isn't going to return, because I had a dream where we're old people in rocking chairs together. So I don't believe that the rapture is going to happen in our lifetime. So I was praying about that, and the Lord gave me a dream. And in this dream, I was with my wife and my daughter, and we were driving up in a car, and we were driving towards the sunset, and we were passing through. It was a 2-lane road, and we were driving towards the west, and the phone rang, and there were fields all around us, and they were grape fields. And the phone rang, and my wife says, hey, it's some guy on the phone. He wants to talk to you about a business opportunity. So I pulled over and next to this canal, and there was a water tower there made out of concrete. You see them out in fields, and on top of it was a handle. That handle was shaped like the number 7. And I thought, that's odd. How do they turn that handle to turn the water on, because it looks like the number 7? And then as I walked around the front of the car to get the phone, I don't know why I didn't just take the phone from her, but I got out of the car and walked around. The front grille on the car had 7 slats on it, and I thought, that's odd. I've never seen a car with 7 slats. She handed me the phone, and the guy says, look, I don't want to talk to you about a business opportunity. He says, I want you to tell me about salvation and the rapture. And so I was like, wow, that's a really complicated thing. You know, I have to tell you about how sin came into the world and how the law was handed down and how sacrifice for the law and for forgiveness of sins, and then how Christ came. And he says, look, it's really important to me. Could you just, he says, I'm just down the street from you. If you'll turn around and go back the way you came, you'll see me on the right-hand side. And he was very convincing, so I told my wife, I said, look, I've got to go talk to this guy. So she said, okay, and I got in the car. She was kind of aggravated, but we got in the car, and I drove back the other way. And there was all these grape vineyards, and in the middle of this one grape vineyard next to this road were these huge mature walnut trees. And walnuts are a fruit that only kings could have, and this man was standing underneath these trees. So I pulled in this road and pulled off underneath these. He was like 2 rows back in it, and I pulled in there, and I heard crunching noise, and I got out of the car, and this guy was pretty tall. He was like 6'3" or 4", maybe 5. Anyway, he had long dark hair, and he had a green hunter's vest on and a white t-shirt and Levi's and some farm boots on. And he says, do you see what you've done? And then I said, I looked down, I saw my tracks had went over. He had laid out rolls of paper, and on those rolls of paper were grapes, and they were turning into raisins. And he says, do you see what you've done? You've damaged my harvest. Because the Lord had called me to be a minister years ago, and I thought, well, an angel will come and tell me. You know, it's not just something I'll feel. So I didn't do any of that. And so he said, you've damaged my harvest. And he said, for that you must die. And I said, you know, I'm really sorry. I didn't see it. It's dark in here, and I didn't notice that. I said, I'll pay for that damage that I've caused. I apologize. And he says, okay. He says, you're forgiven, but you must be punished. And he pulled out a grapevine, and it had part of the branch on it, and the part of the branch was shaped like the number 7. He stripped the leaves off, and he told me, turn your back to me, and I did. And he hit me with that number 7 3 times like it was a whip. And he says, it's finished. Now I want to show you something. He said, come here. And he opened his vest up, and my question to the Lord was, is it truly the end of time? You know, is the rapture going to happen? And he pulled out some papers, and when he looked at me, I couldn't see his face. I could just see light coming out of where a face would be, and I could see his hair kind of, you know, from the brightness of it. And he says, do you see this? He says, when they propose to take my home from me, you know that it is the end of time. And he says, do you see right here? They propose to take my home from me. And I said, well, you know, maybe I can help you. You know, I don't have a lot of bills. I can give you what money I have left, and I can even come here and help you work. And he says, no. He says, you don't understand it. It is the end of time. When they propose to take my home, it is the end of time. There is no more time left. So, with that, I woke up. And I was telling my son about this dream. And he says, Dad, I think they're going to be proposing to take part of Jerusalem. Let's look it up and see if it's the Temple Mount area. So we did, and that's exactly what the Palestinians are doing. They're trying to get Jerusalem and all of the Temple Mount. In fact, they have just ceded that to one of the kings of Saudi Arabia, I believe it is. So they're trying to give the Temple Mount to them and control over this. And that is where God's temple was. That's where his home is permanent. Before he had a tabernacle, that could be moved around. His permanent home was on the Temple Mount. The Temple Mount was bought by Abraham from a man in the past. That's probably one of the only pieces of Israel that was actually bought before they went into captivity, and then they came out and they possessed all of the land. So that was all by covenant with God, from God to them for what they were supposed to do. So we know that this dream is telling me 2 things. It is the end of time, and salvation is the most important thing. And what is salvation? Salvation is through faith in his Son, for the work that Christ did on the cross. He died once for all sins, and for all of us, for every man, woman, and child that comes into this world. Until the end of time, Jesus Christ paid for those sins. So there is nothing that we can do to earn our righteousness, to earn our salvation. We just come to Him and have faith, believing Him that our sins are forgiven. He told us to go and sin no more. You see that many times. And you look at what happened with Peter when he denied Christ, and Jesus was telling him, when you're converted, I want you to feed my sheep. So the Lord wants us to have faith, and He wants us to be truly converted. If you're truly converted in your heart, you've truly given your life to the Lord. That's what He wants, and He wants you to have faith. Of course, we're all going to have problems. Paul the Apostle said it. He said that he served the law of sin with his body, with his flesh. So he was having problems too. He said, but I serve the Lord with my spirit. So the Lord is after. None of us can be perfect. That's my point. And what we have to do is have faith in Him, believe in Him. That's what He said. Nevertheless, when I come back, will I find faith? When He was talking about the unjust judge and how he did right, and how much more will God, who is just, do good for us? So that's the question. The question is, I'm checking my camera to see if it's still running. It only goes like for 15 minutes and it shuts off because the sensor heats up. That's the problem with these 35mm cameras. Anyway, I want you to know, all you to know, that the Lord loves you enough. God loves you so much that He sent His only Son, that whosoever would believe in Him would not